everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we are covering a topic that is very much overdue, and that is the topic of kanji, or the Chinese characters. And kanji have been something that we have included in pretty much every single video thus far. It's been in every single example sentence because the Japanese that we provide for each example sentence usually has most of the words, except for the grammatical fine points such as particles and whatnot, consisting of kanji. And it hasn't been a necessity to know in order to understand the lessons that we covered in each respective video, but kanji is a very vital and essential part of the Japanese language, particularly the writing aspect of it, and it is probably the main reason why Japanese is considered such a hard language to master. So just what the heck is kanji? Well, kanji it's an ideographic writing system, the ideographic writing system of the Japanese language that originates from China, basically. And the kanji for kanji is, well, kanji. That's not supposed to be a verbal statement or a point to be made. So we have the kanji right here in front and center. That is the kanji for kanji. And what it literally translates to is characters of the Han Dynasty. So in contrast to the English language, which is our main point of reference here since this video series is done in English, and also in contrast to hiragana and katakana, the other two writing systems of the Japanese language, all of which, English, hiragana, and katakana, are phonetic, basically, in which the characters or the letters are gonna represent sounds. Kanji, on the other hand, is ideographic. I believe it's also commonly referred to as logographic. And what this means is that the characters are going to be representing ideas more so than they do sounds. Although with that being said, every single character, every single kanji character is in fact associated with a particular set of pronunciations. So they do represent sounds as well, but the main idea here is that they represent ideas first and foremost. So this is already getting kind of complicated, so let's give a quick example. Let's take this kanji. This kanji right here can be read a number of ways, including kado, to, and mon, depending on its usage. So we see here that it does in fact have sounds associated to it. When you see it, you'll probably say one of those pronunciations, but those things aren't at the forefront of importance here. The important thing in terms of kanji is that this character represents the idea of a gate, and visually speaking, it looks like one too, albeit it looks like a Japanese traditional gate more so than a Western one that you would have in your front yard or something. So generally speaking, when you see this character, the first thing that comes to mind is just the idea of a gate, not so much any of those three pronunciations. You wouldn't so much instantly think of one of its three pronunciations the moment you see it. As in English, if you saw, say, the letter A, you would just immediately think of ah or a or any of its pronunciations because that character represents a sound, and it doesn't have any association to a particular idea. So we've contrasted between kanji and the English language a lot, so for the sake of comparison, what aspect of the English language resembles kanji the most? Well, that would be just numbers. So for instance, if we take the number 1, if we see that numeric character on the screen or on our page, on our paper or whatever, we don't instantly think of the pronunciation of it as 1, we would think of the actual idea that it represents, which would be something along the lines of a singular entity of something, of anything, just one of anything. And that's pretty much how kanji works. As we said with the gate, we see that character, we think gate. We don't think of any of its pronunciations because there are a number of them and they aren't at the forefront of attention. And that brings up another similarity between numbers and kanji. When we see that character 1, it's not always going to be pronounced the same way, because if there was an S and a T after it, it would be pronounced differently, it would be first. So numbers also do have a set of pronunciations as opposed to just one pronunciation that it's associated with, and the pronunciation is what you're supposed to think of immediately when you see the character. That's not how it works. You think of the idea, and there can be a number of pronunciations that you can use, and that is kind of the thing that you worry about later on, because when you first see it, you think of the meaning. Okay, so now moving on, we used the example of gate earlier, and that was a really good example of a kanji character that looks like its meaning, because when you see the actual visual, it kind of looks like a gate if you are Japanese and are kind of attuned to what traditional Japanese gates look like. But by all means, that is a solid example of how intuitive the kanji writing system is. It makes sense to have the characters that represent ideas to actually look like the ideas that they represent when you write them out. However, that's by no means a reliable aspect of kanji, because gate and a lot of other kanji are like that, most of them are probably not like that. So just to give a few more examples, let's look at this kanji. This kanji means meat, and it's pronounced niku, and it kind of does look like meat. You can see it kind of looks like a rib cage with some meat on it, and you could probably presume that that means meat if you're judging just by the look of the character. Now let's take a look at some really misleading kanji characters, and let's use the idea of circle, and circle has a number of kanji that can be associated with it. We'll plug 3 up onto the screen right now. So these are the 3 kanji for circle, and you might have noticed that none of them look like a circle. And a circle, which is a geometric shape and probably one of the most non-divisive ideas to be depicted visually, is a circle, and none of these look like a circle, so kanji is pretty darn weird. So for that example, we have the circle not looking like a circle. On the flip side, we'll have things that look like something, and you'll think it's that thing, but it's not that thing. For example, we have this kanji, which represents the idea of mouth. But what does it look like? It just looks like a rectangle. So if you saw that for the first time in your life, you might just think, oh, that probably means rectangle. But alas, pretty misleading. It doesn't mean rectangle, it means mouth. So again, the takeaway from that is that kanji is, by nature, something that you would assume to make everything look like what it's supposed to represent. But we give it the pass because it's a super ancient writing system, and there has definitely been countless changes of interpretation of ideas over the centuries. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for the first introduction to kanji as a writing system. In our next coverage of introduction to kanji, because this is still just in the realm of introducing the writing system, we'll probably cover the advantages and disadvantages of kanji and how to get started on learning kanji. But we probably should have some more examples in this video, so we'll start off with the kanji that people probably learn most, I believe, and that's just going to be the numbers, because even though the number system that is used in English is kind of almost universal, in which it's used in many other languages, including Japanese, Japanese also has kanji that represent numbers that are used in lieu of the 1, 2, 3 that look like 1, 2, 3 as we know it routinely. And interestingly enough, the Japanese kanji system has the English number system beat by 2 numbers in terms of characters that look like the ideas they represent, because in English the number 1 actually looks like the idea of 1 because it's just one line basically, so it makes sense to represent one thing. But once you get to 2, it's just a weird thing that you don't really, why would that mean 2 things? But in the Japanese kanji system, the number 1 is basically 1 horizontally, and that makes sense because it's just one line. Then the 2 is 2 lines horizontally. The 3 is 3 lines horizontally. Then 4 is where it gets kind of iffy. Okay, so let's go through numbers 1 to 10 in the Japanese kanji writing system really quickly. We'll have the kanji appear as we cover them, and we'll include the stroke order. And stroke order is basically the established order of strokes you're supposed to make when you're writing these kanji. And every single kanji has a stroke order. Whether you want to follow it is up to you, really. So let's start off with 1. When 1 is by itself, it's pronounced ichi, and it is basically just a horizontal line. Next, we have 2, which is pronounced ni, and it is basically 2 horizontal lines. For 3, we have san, and this is basically 3 horizontal lines. For 4, we have yon, which is also pronounced sometimes shi, and what it basically looks like is a box with 2 curves at the top 2 corners. 5 is pronounced go, and at this point, I don't even think I can describe what these characters look like by word. 6 is roku. 7 is shichi, or otherwise read as nana. 8 is hachi. 9 is kyu, or just ku. And last but the opposite of least, 10 is ju, and it basically just looks like a plus sign. And so that's what the numbers 1 through 10 look like when they're written in the Japanese kanji writing system, as opposed to just the number characters that we know from the English language. And keep in mind that, like I said earlier, each character has more than one pronunciation, even if I didn't mention them while I was going through them, because it depends on what other characters they're used with. Combined with, the pronunciation changes. But like the main point of this video was, it's the meaning that is supposed to be associated with kanji characters first and foremost, and pronunciation is something that you handle after you see how it's being used. And so that's our first introduction to kanji, the writing system of Chinese characters of the Japanese language, and we'll continue to delve into it as in time.